Hello and welcome to the Tour Report from Secret Golf. This week we're off to Detroit Golf Club for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. There's this and the Wyndham Championship left before the FedExCup playoffs begin. And then also this week we have Live Golf in Bedminster. And Elk, you and I are going to talk about that a little bit later on because, really it's a jam-packed week of golf.
Yeah, and you know, normally speaking, this is a very interesting time of the season because it's only 2 weeks before the FedExCup sort of completes until we go into the playoff system. Now we also have Live Golf, which is gaining tons of momentum, taking away tons of players from the tour. And I think of this event, Diane, how much this event, if people don't think there's been an impact from people leaving to go to Live, Bryson DeChambeau was the face of this tournament. Phil Mickelson was at this tournament last year. You know, you throw in all the other guys like Poulter and Garcia and all these guys that are not playing this week in Detroit. It certainly, for me at least, has left a big gap. I don't care what anyone says. The impact from the Live players leaving has been massive.
It has. And you and I did a video on it last week and it's on YouTube. We did a podcast as well, so you can go back and have a listen. And we just talked about where Live Golf was at with 3 new signings last week and the impact they're having, the repercussions going forward, what the PGA Tour is potentially going to be faced with now. And these are big name players. I mean, looking back, Bryson DeChambeau won the Rocket Mortgage Classic just a couple of years ago. Matt Wolff finished runner-up. Neither of them are going to be playing this week. They're both in Bedminster for the Live Golf event. And I mean, even last week, Tony Finau was a fantastic winner in Minnesota, but it kind of lacked a depth of field. And by depth of field, you know, we obviously see great players, but these kind of like big name players.
Yes, well, of course, Tony Finau saved the 3M for the television on Sunday, coming in hot and, you know, holding all kind of putts for him and was a very popular winner. He had his 5 children there. It was an awesome way to see the end of the tournament. I played the tournament. The scoring was kind of what we thought. We completely didn't get it right as far as who we thought would play well. We've done more studying this week, Diane, and as I said a minute ago, this is a very important time of the year because we're talking about who's going to be exempt for next year's tour. You know, the guys that have got to get inside of the top 125 by the end of next week at Greensboro. Off goes the playoffs, but what's left is that 125 that'll be exempt for 2023.
Yeah, we had Callum Tarran. He was one of my picks, and he finished in the top 10, and that was really the only the only bright light.
I finished last in all my games, so I looked out, you know.
And, you know, we talk about the fact that these guys that are out with the 125, this is the time where they have to be motivated. And we really saw that with Scott Piercy, who, you know, had a horrendous collapse on the back nine on Sunday, but really had been in a great position. And he had been in that kind of shaky area where he had to do something and make a move. So this week is kind of similar in that it's wide open and really anyone could go out and win. We've seen that in the past champions here. There's no specific style of player that has had great success around here. I mean, the guys that have won have done it in completely different ways. I mentioned Bryson and Matt Wolff runner-up that year. Nate Lashley has won this event, and last year it was Cam Davis. And when you look at their stats of how they won, they're all completely different.
Yeah, old traditional style course. So, you know, I still think I watched those tournaments that you spoke of, and Bryson toned it down and hit it in play. So did Cam
Davis.
So did Cam Davis last year, was driving the ball a mile. But it's all about these little undulating greens with the little drop-offs in the back. It's an old, I think is it an old Seth Rayner course? I'm not sure. I can't remember. Very traditional, but green complexes are tricky. The scoring will be good, of course, but Diane, my theme this week, I have a theme. Oh. And you know me, I'm big on themes. I've got players that are coming onto the tour, and I've got players possibly that are being pushed out and are leaving the tour. I had a theory way back, I'm going to tell you, it was called the Penguin Theory, Diane. And you may not have even heard this before.
I think I have.
You have heard it? Yeah. I pictured this rock in the middle of the ocean, wide enough for 125 penguins to sit on. and thousands of penguins are in the ocean. That's and the 125 penguins that fit on that rock are the tour players. And if one falls off the end, there's 1,000 that want to jump up on the other end. The only way to make yourself safe is there's a couple of rocks up top for major champion penguins and winners of extra penguins that sit up top, but only 125 to sit on the penguin rock.
That's great. I love it. We do have some big names back in the field this week after coming back from Scotland and recovering from any jet lag after the Open. Patrick Cantlay. I mean, Tony Finau is playing again after winning the 3M Open last week. Cameron Young, fresh off his runner-up at the Open. Will Zalatoris, Max Homa. So we have the big names, but we definitely have to look at these long shots too. And that's what I said earlier. You know, Cam Davis last year was 150 to 1 at the start of the week. Obviously, Bryson, when he won, was one of the favourites. And when Nate Lashley won in 2019, he was the very last man to get in the field. So there weren't even like odds on him at the start of the week because he earned his place so last minute and then just played great over the 4 days. So our picks are interesting. I found this really difficult. I found last week hard to handicap, and I found this week difficult as well because it's so tempting to go for those big names. You kind of want the wild card long shot to do well, but then we saw last week with Finau that you really do have to look at the superstars that are headlining.
Well, it is the most difficult time to handicap, Diane, because we don't know how much foot on the gas these guys have. For example, why is Tony Finau there? He's trying to obviously improve his position. There's a story behind each one of these guys. Yeah. Adam Scott's playing this week. Patrick Cantlay, you know, this is the time that he heated up last year, and a month from now won everything and won the FedExCup. Is he looking for a spark there? There's guys out there that are playing terrible right now, and they have to play that. So they're just trying to make a cut, trying to survive. There's other guys that have a slight amount of momentum, whether it's Cameron Young, Will Zalatoris, Davis Riley, the three best young players in the game today. Davis Riley missed the cut last week, but Cameron Young and Davis Riley are the two guys that are looking at Rookie of the Year, coming off Rookie of the Year from Will Zalatoris. So we got some young guys that have got a lot of energy. Of course, all three of those guys are just trying to better their position going into the playoffs. But you're right; it's a very difficult field to handicap because we don't know the amount of gas that the accelerator the players are putting the foot under.
Okay. So kind of like last week, a relatively easy course, and we expect the scoring to be low. Way less water hazards than we saw last week at the 3M Open, which everyone will be happy about. What else do you know about this course? Obviously, you can see behind me that it's tree lined, and that's going to be the issue. One thing that I did see, you know, when I looked at all the winner stats, is great wedge play and great putting. Great putting seems to be the real kind of like standout thing that you have to do well. It's the real defense of this course is the greens.
Yeah, the greens are the defense of this course. They're old-style greens pushed up, and they've got little roly-poly pieces in them that drop off all over the place. Some guys said it's very difficult to get the ball near the flag. It is pretty, you say, is low scoring this week, will be again. I think it's just precision with the irons to get it back into these ripply-type greens and these little fingers where the pins are close enough where you can actually make a few putts, Diane.
Yeah. And then the 17th is a par 5, plays as one of the easiest holes on the course. I love it when we see the 17th as a par 5 because it creates that kind of late in the day drama.
Yeah, and 18th, as I recall, is a very bottleneck hole. There was talk when Bryson whether he would hit driver because a lot of guys lay up and it just gets thinner and narrow as it goes with a creek splitting the middle of the fairway. And Bryson, when he won, drove it down there like 370 yards and just chipped it on the green and won the tournament. It was an amazing finish, considering that he represented Rocket Mortgage, and now he is a million miles away from Rocket Mortgage.
A
million miles away.
He's a couple of 100 million, probably.
Probably a couple of 100 million miles away.
But we're going to talk about the Live Golf event in Bedminster a little bit later on, and we'll talk about the course and some of the big names that we're looking at this week. But we're going to get into our picks for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. I'm excited to hear your picks going by your theme of coming and going, and then well, my theme is all over the place, so we will dive right in. We'll start with our outright favourites. Who are you looking at this week?
Well, I talked about the coming and going, and you know, when lakes, you know, where you fish, Diane, about every 7 years, the lake turns over. It's where the particles on top of the lake are heavier than they are on the bottom, so they sink and the whole thing flips over. Well, we're in the middle of the turnover of the lake, and I've got 3 players that I really like, and I'm going to pick one of them. But I talked about it at the top. We're going to talk about the rookie of the year this year, which would be Cameron Young, who played so well, drove it on the last green at St Andrews, made eagle to just get nipped by Cam Smith. Of course, we're talking about Will Zalatoris. Both those guys haven't won. And then Davis Riley, who missed the cut last week, but having a tremendous year. But those are the 3 young guns that we have on the tour right now, Diane. Nobody will disagree with me on those. And, I've got to go with Cameron Young, Diane, to play well this week, coming off second place. He's just got nothing, but he's from the Northeast. He knows sort of these Poana bouncy greens. His dad, they grew up in a quirky little course. He did up in New York. I just think this is going to be like home away from home for Cam Young this week.
Okay. He's sitting at number 13 in the FedExCup standings. So for someone like Cam Young, he's got his eyes on the big prize. I mean, he can jump all the way up there, and he's pretty much locked in for Eastlake, the Tour Championship. But he could win the whole thing. He's in that kind of position right now and playing that well. So Cameron Young at 18-1, definitely one of the favourites this week.
And it just goes to show, last thing on Cam Young, how far he hits the ball. Yeah. Compared to, say, Rory McIlroy, who we saw Rory needed an eagle of his own on the 18th at St Andrews, came up about 20 yards short. Cam Smith got into the Valley of Sin or to the edge of it, but Cam Young was able to drive it all the way up on top, right by the flag on 18. Just, yes, it could have been a bounce or whatever, but Cam Young is massive off the tee. We always look at Rory and how far he drives, but Cam Young is a monster.
Okay. All right. So he's your outright favourite. Mine is a game time decision here. And I'll tell you, my first pick was to go with Tony Finau, lifting back-to-back trophies, just because he played so well last week. He was first tee to green, second around the green, third in approach, and over the weekend obviously we saw his putter come to life, and he really he didn't steal it away from Scott Piercy, but Piercy, who had like a ridiculous lead on Saturday, just threw it away on Sunday. So great for Tony Finau. He's 14-1 this week, but my last minute switch up, I'm going to go for Adam Scott. So Adam Scott is 28-1. So I love those odds for him. In his last 2 finishes, back-to-back top 15s, the US Open and at the Open Championship, he's putting better than he has in a long time. We've always known that putting has been a great part of his game, but he's definitely improving. He's sitting at 14th in birdies or better for the season. This is his first appearance at the Rocket Mortgage Classic, but, come on, he's a veteran player. He'll be able to figure out this easy course pretty low. So I like Adam Scott this week, 28-1 as my outright favourite.
Yeah, you can't go against Scotty. He grew up in Melbourne around these type of courses, meaning that they're tricky, in the sand belt in Australia. He's putting well, he's 77th in the FedEx. So obviously he's there to try to get his position set so he can get deep into the playoff. 16th in driving accurate distance and 36th in putting. I don't think I've ever seen a green square next to Scotty's putting. So that's a big plus for him.
Yeah, and he hasn't played a huge amount. As I said, his last 2 tournaments have been the 2 majors, the 2 Opens, but top 15 in both. So I like him this week. And as you say, 77th in the FedExCup standings. The top 70 play the second event. So he's looking to really make a run. And there's been a lot of rumours surrounding Adam Scott and Live Golf. Who knows, maybe this is his last FedExCup playoffs on the PGA Tour, and he wants to really give it a crack. So I like him this week. I think there's good motivation there.
Yeah, there's no point for guys if they are thinking about going to Live Golf and they're in the middle of the pack, kind of like Adam Scott. They might as well finish off the season and take all the money that they've earned this year and try to win a bit more if they're going to decide to do that.
Yeah, who knows? Okay, so moving on to ones to watch, guys at slightly higher odds. Again, I'm between 2. Do you want me to go first or do you want to go?
Yeah, you go.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with Kevin Kisner. My 2 names were Kevin Kisner at 40-1 and Chris Kirk at 60-1. But I think I'm going to go with Kiz. Obviously, very different from that Bryson DeChambeau winning model in that he's one of the shorter hitters on the tour. But he's had really good success here over the past 3 years. Made the cut every time, finished in 3rd place in 2020, a tie for 8th last year. And when, he's a good putter, but when his putter really heats up, watch out. He's having a good season, 5 top 10s. He's number 32 in the FedExCup standings. So he's put himself in a great position to make it all the way to the end. I think easier course, he can plot his way around it. I think this probably plays into his strengths. So I'm going with Kisner at 40-1.
Yeah, it's a good course for him. This is perfect setup for him. He doesn't have to crush it off the tee. We saw how Bryson won here, but you can also just poke it down the middle and play your wedges, and that's his strength. And he knows that. He's always said that he goes to courses where he thinks he's going to do well. My pick is totally different than yours, Diane. We talked about the lake effect with these guys that are coming and going. We know the guys that are coming. Here's the guys that are maybe got their foot out the door, Diane. I'm gonna read to you 4 legendary players on the tour. Stuart Sink, Open champion, 122nd on the money. Lucas Glover, US Open champion, 124th. Webb Simpson is on the bubble at 125th on the FedEx. And Jason Day, 4 major champion, PGA champion, sitting at 127th on the money list, or FedEx Cup. So my one to watch this week, I don't think those guys are done, competing out on the tour. So the best I could find, Diane, was Stuart Sink, who finished 26th last week. I'm looking for a little bit of form out of him. He's 130 to 1. All of these guys, surely, Diane, are going to be playing their hardest golf. They're going to be in almost like in tour school mode to get inside of that 125. I think you could pick any of them. They're all Sink's 130 to 1, Glover's 200 to 1, Jason Day's 100 to 1, and Webb Simpson's 50. But I'm going to take Stuart Sink as my one to watch at 150 to 1 this week to get it done and move his way back into the tour scene.
I'm surprised he's at 122nd. I thought his number would be a bit higher than that because he's overall had a good season, but that's a great pick. Webb Simpson, do you remember a couple of years ago we picked him every week because
he was at the top of our list every week.
So good every week.
What's going wrong with Webb's game? I can probably look over to the putting column and take a look.
There's one massive number, and it's scrambling actually. It says here 145. He's 11th in putting right now. Yeah,
so obviously something's going on. He's not driving it very far. He's barely in the top 100. So so he just hasn't been able to capitalize obviously on any kind of form on the weekend to cash a check.
I'm saving him for the Wyndham next week. That's his tournament, isn't it? Didn't he name his daughter Wyndham?
I think he did, yeah. That would be brutal. That would be brutal if he lost his card at the Wyndham when his daughter's name's Wyndham. No.
My God. So he's the bubble boy right now at 125 in the FedEx Cup.
Anyone from 115 to 135 is bubble boys, I think.
It's pretty scary. It's a scary time. We were talking about Patton Kazire, who's one of our Secret Golf contributors. He's at 120 right now. So again, somebody that really has to play well over the next couple of weeks to get their spot and lock up their card. Right, as I said, this is a difficult one to handicap because it's so wide open, but we're going to look at our dark horses over 100 to 1. You've already given us your one to watch at 130 to 1. So
yeah, I know. My dark horse is better than that, or less odds. 100 to 1, my dark horse is. But again, I'm looking at guys that are sort of in a little bit of form, but they're also outside of the top 125. So so if you do go to Detroit this week and you are outside of keeping your ticket, what do you need? What do you need to play well? Yeah. Well, the first thing is you need to be playing well. So I'm picking the guy who is outside the top 125, that's playing the most decent, has a chance to actually do something this week, and that's Austin Smotherman. Finished 24th last week. He's 134th on the FedEx. He has one tiny little decent week, Diane, saying a top 10. In other words, all he'd have to do last week is better his score by only 3 strokes. He would have been in the top 10, and that would have been enough to push him inside to keep his ticket. Austin Smotherman this week.
And he's 100 to 1, you said?
100 to 1, yeah.
Okay, my guy's 100 to 1 as well. And again, I'm looking at someone who played well last week. and is at that kind of shaky number of 137th in the standings. So again, has to continue it. But last week would have given him a good boost. Detroit Golf Club is, comparable to TPC Twin Cities. They're both relatively easy. I mean, this course maybe even plays easier due to the lack of water compared to last week. But I'm taking Danny Willett at 100-1. So he had a great week, first top 10 of the season. He finished really strong as well, 5 birdies in his last 9 holes. But as I said, has to have a good week. I looked at his stats. His wedge play right now is great. He's second for the season around the greens. And really, like last week, he just needs a better than average putting week to try and replicate that performance. So Danny Willett at 100-1 at number 137 in the standings. I'm picking him as my dark horse.
Good pick. You always take a Euro somewhere in your picks. I understand. Oh, you took an Aussie too. You took an Aussie and a Euro. That's good.
Yeah, I did, actually. I did. All right, then. So those are our picks for this week for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. It's, a shaky time. And then next week being the Wyndham Championship. The guys at the top will make more money because that's when the Wyndham rewards are given out. And it's a bonus for the guys that finish in the top 10 of the standings. So there's a little bit of extra cash motivation there for the top guys. And then we move on to the FedExCup playoffs. So we'll really dive into that. And remember, we're really going to be looking around that bubble of the 125 and who's going to move in, who's going to move out. The coming and the going, Elk.
The upside down of the lake. When the water's heavier at the top, it goes to the bottom.
The penguins on the rock. We'll always remember that one.
Yeah.
Right. Also this week, it's the Live Golf event at the Trump National in Bedminster. We're going to have another little show that we put together for that. We'll have a look at the course and give you some of our picks there too.